So I was given another tractor. We'll see if we can save this one just like I did the Carburetor. Only with this one I'd like to go into a little more detail about fixing these up. So the first thing I like to do is check for oil, make sure there's oil in it. And it does. It's really thick and really dirty, so I'd say it hasn't been changed in a long time, so probably it wasn't that great taken care of, but it might have just been put up for winter and just didn't change the oil, because I usually change all my oils and stuff in the spring when I get ready. Next thing is check the air filter, see if there's any mice nests or anything like that. And the filter is pretty dirty, which is but common for these, because I mean, if you're in a dusty environment they'll clog them up. And then there's usually a pre-filter in here, and here it is. So the carburetor, there's nothing down in the carburetor. There's nothing down in the carburetor. No mice nest that I can see. And on to fuel. So here's an indicator how long it's been setting. Is by the smell of the fuel. You don't necessarily have to smell down here. You can smell the top of the cap here. And it's a little stale. It's like that gas down there. It's not sludged yet. So I'd say this gas hasn't been in here too long. It's probably too old to run off of. I mean, it'll probably run off of it, but it won't run right. And if you keep using this and try to fix it because it won't run right, you'll probably never get it fixed, because the gas is the problem to begin with. So when you go to tuning them up and stuff, you might as well just go ahead and drain all that old stuff out. But then again, if you just want to run it, just run it all out. Let's see. On these engines, the carburetors have this solenoid to shut your fuel off when you turn the ignition off. If these aren't working, you'll probably start up, run for a second, shut back off. Start up, run for a second, shut back off. So you want to kind of hold your hand on here, or your finger on here, turn the key on, but you don't have to turn it over, just turn the key on. You should feel that click. And another thing that these will do when they go bad, after about 5-10 minutes, maybe 15, they'll get like hot, and the magnet will stop working, and they'll close, and the motor will shut off. So you're sitting there trying to diagnose a fuel issue, like in here, or in the fuel tank, or even in the carburetor, but really it's this right here. Then if you let it sit for a few minutes, it cools back down, it'll run again for another 5-10 minutes. And another thing with these engines, they're really good for backfiring, because they got these large exhaust, and these don't always stop all the fuel. So it's best to idle them down, let them idle for a few seconds, and then shut them off. Something else I like to do, just in case someone else has been in here before, pull your spark plug wire off. Make sure your spark plug's tight. I can't turn it with my fingers, so that's tight enough just for an initial start. We'll take this flywheel here, see if we can give it a spin, and we can. See if we can get a full spin out of it. And you heard that noise there. That's the piston either coming back or going forward. So it's going to push or pull air into the crankcase. So that tells us the rod's there, the piston's in there moving. It doesn't confirm that the rings and stuff are good, but it lets me know that it doesn't have a thrown rod, so it's more likely it's not blown up. Something else to look at is your wiring. So I can see someone's already went through and started unhooking all the safeties. So this one here most likely is going to be to the PTO lever right here. And there'll be another one under your seat, which is, I can see the wire right here. It's a little hard to see on camera. And there should be another one over here underneath for your brake pedal, and it's up under here somewhere. Be a little difficult to see right now. So if you got one that won't like the starter, like the switch won't turn the starter, most likely one of them safeties is going to be a problem. Or if you got one that won't start, the safety could also be the problem, because they can also shut the engine off. Okay, I have a key. It did come with a key. and it does turn. So being set outside, hopefully we don't have no problems out of this key switch. If we do, they're usually not too expensive, and they're not very hard to replace neither. So on this one we got a reverse, and again here's another safety switch right down here. As soon as we move this out of the way, there's first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So all that seems to be working. Right here's this reverse safety switch, and this is pretty common to have a dead battery or no battery. This one did have a battery in it. I went ahead and got a new one because I'll need it, and I needed to return the other one to get my money back for the core. So we got a brand new battery to start cranking on. Normally on these mowers, either under the seat like MTD, Cub Cadet, or back here will be one of these stickers, and they're usually bright like this. And this will be your manufacturer. You'll have your model number, which you'll need to order parts for. And for your Briggs & Stratton engine, like this model, it's written right here on the valve cover. It's hard to see, but there's a model, there's a type, and there's a code. On different models and different years, Briggs & Stratton put their model type code numbers in different places. Some will be like written up on the shroud, some will be written across the top of the shroud. And on this Briggs & Stratton twin cylinder here, it's written right here. And here's an example when it's written above the spark plug on a push mower. And here's an older mower from probably late 60s. And you can see it's written right above the muffler. And what's really nice with these newer push mowers, you just scan this code, and it'll take you right to the Briggs & Stratton website, and you can look the parts up directly on one of their parts catalogs. So probably one of the things that people don't like the most is electrical. It is a little bit hard to work with, and you do got to have a pretty decent understanding of what's going on to figure it out. And you have to have like a wiring diagram where you'll spend like probably a good hour, 2 hours just sitting there tracing wires, figuring out what goes to what, circuit design and all that. Luckily with these lawnmowers, they're pretty simple. Some of the new stuff has your logic boards in it, or your circuit boards. They get a little computerized. Like this tractor here, it's pretty much all old simple circuits. So when we go to hook his battery up for the first time with the key off, it's good to take your wire and just touch it, make sure there's no sparks. So that's a good sign we got nothing shorted out. Then, because you do gotta be careful if you go hooking stuff up and someone's been there before and they left something unhooked, it will start a fire. And now that we got the battery hooked up, before we go to start it, I like to get under here, and on the throttle cable, make sure it's free. Some of these will get stuck wide open, and when you start them, the governor cannot slow it down, so it'll go wide open, possibly even throw a rod or something. Normally this yellow wire right here is the kill switch wire. You can see it comes up in here and it goes up behind the starter, because your mag sits like right under this cover right here. So if a mouse got in there and chewed that wire in half, it will not shut off. So your other options to come out here and pull the spark plug wire, or if you can pull the choke separately, at an idle, pull the choke and put it in gear and stall it out. But as for this one, the choke is full throttle, so even if you try to choke it out, you couldn't, because you're giving it all the throttle, unless you came under here and held the throttle shut while you choked it. Alright, so the starter drags just a little bit, but it'll be alright. I'm not worried about it. Turned it over pretty nice. And of course, been setting, it's either got junk fuel in the carburetor or no fuel at all. So I'm going to dump a little bit of fresh fuel down in the carburetor and see if we can get this thing to take off. When it comes to putting something down the carburetor to get them to start, This 2+2 right here works pretty good, and your brake cleaners work good. But you gotta watch, like your red can of brake clean is non-flammable, so it won't help at all. That's good for cleaning oil around a hot engine. You don't have to worry about it catching fire. Then you have this kind right here in the green can, where it is flammable, and this will start an engine. But when you start using cleaners, and the engine's been sitting for a while, but most likely there's no oil around the rings or the piston or in the cylinder. So you go spraying this in here, and what little oil may be there, you're now getting rid of. So now you got metal on metal with no oil, and it's just going to damage stuff. So you got to be really careful. Now, an engine that's been ran recently, it won't hurt it at all to use a little bit of that because there's still oil in there. So the best thing to use is a little bit of 2-stroke oil for like a chainsaw or a weed eater. That way you got gas, but yet you also have oil in there too to help with the valves and the rings. Alright, so it did rev up. Acted like the governor had control of it because it wasn't letting it go wide open. There's not enough gas in there to keep things running. I didn't hear any knocks, anything like that that would show me there's an internal engine problem. But there could still be a problem later once you get it actually running and warmed up. A knock or something might start to occur. I'm thinking that they just put this thing away and they didn't use it again. So let's put some more gas down the carburetor and see if we can get it to run off the old fuel. This time I'm going to go all the way up to choke. So I'd say we're running off the fuel because that ran for a while, but that fuel's probably just too old. The carburetor might even be gummed up. So let's get rid of all that fuel and put some fresh in and see what happens. Alright, so you can see that I was getting a little bit of fuel. It stopped. It should be a nice steady flow. It's hard to show it on the camera because this sits about right here and it completely stops. But as soon as I open up the cap, I can hear it pulling air, and that's got like a really nice flow to it. So that tells me that vent in that cap is stuck or clogged. On these gravity fed systems, you want to use an inline filter like this. They come in red and there's also white. Some of them's clear. And when you get a filter, make sure it doesn't say for fuel pump systems only, because some of them longer ones that you can see through, They are designed for fuel pumps, and they will not gravity feed fuel through to your carburetor. On this one, the room between the bottom of the bowl and the top of the magnet here takes a special wrench, a really thin wrench, to get in there, and I don't believe I have any of those here. I know I got them over at the shop, so I might not be able to pull that, to twist that off to drop the bowl down. Another thing with these carburetors, when you drop the bowl, there's a gasket or an O-ring that goes right along the top, right where it goes against the body of the carburetor, and that will swell up and where it's too big. So I do hate taking these bowls off if I don't have to, and the carb kits for these carburetors are a little on the expensive side, so I'm going to see if I can get away without having to remove the bowl. And you've probably seen other people like tapping on the side of the carburetors like this. What you're doing is, if the fuel level was up and it stays there for a while, sometimes the needle will get stuck. Even though that fuel level comes down, the float will stay up with the needle and it won't let fuel in. So by tapping on it like that, what you're doing is you're vibrating that float so it drops down to allow fuel to come into this bowl where the carburetor pulls from to go into the cylinder. So and also, if you have an engine like this where you keep getting gas in the crankcase, most likely the needle in here is not sealing up, and fuel is coming in here, going up into the carburetor, then running into the engine, leaking past the rings, then ending up right in your oil. Okay, so it's still not getting fuel, it's just running off of what I put in down the carburetor. So I'm going to have to find a wrench or make one to get that solenoid off of there. So it turns out I did have a set in one of the toolboxes. And here's the largest size I have, which is a 1/2 inch. And it fits loose. So hopefully we can get that off of there and get that carburetor cleaned out. Hopefully it doesn't need a rebuild kit, because I don't have one. Yeah, it's extremely old fuel, and if you notice, there's none running out, so that tells me there's none coming from the fuel tank. So I'm going to do a quick test on this solenoid to make sure it's working. And you can see that it's moving, so it's working. And looks like I'm gonna have to drop this bowl off of here, which I didn't want to do. I'm starting to see rust and stuff coming out, so I'm pretty sure it's full of junk. hopefully that gasket in there, or the O-ring, ain't all messed up, which it most likely is. So hopefully we can save it. A lot of rust, and there's nothing coming through the float. It's even opening, so probably the needle's stuck. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. It's really hard to do one-handed. But what I'm trying to do is push this pin out right here so I can drop the float out. Okay, so I got fuel coming from the tank. Still don't have any fuel coming out of the inlet port though. So I'm going to take a this little Milwaukee compressor, and I'm going to see if I can push whatever it is through there. That was 10 pounds, so there's really something clogged up in there. Might have to pull that carburetor off. I'm going to use these torch tip cleaners. There's no metering ports, nothing in there I have to worry about. There's definitely something in there. Feels like rust. Yeah, something's in there gelled up. I wouldn't think that the gas would gel up like that. Usually it takes a long time, unless this thing's been sitting a lot longer than I think. Now I'll take a set of these carburetor brushes and we'll run in there and see if we can get the rest of it out. Something else I'm starting to wonder. That's almost like one of those mud dauber's nests. I'm just wondering if this thing's set without a fuel line on it, and they got in there and built a nest in there. Then someone got it before, started to fix it up, and couldn't figure out why it wouldn't run. So, but we'll see. So now we should have fuel coming through, and we'll run air through there a few more times, and we're gonna put everything back together and see if we can get it to stay running. So you got your float, and your needle sits in there just like that. Then once you have the needle and the float up in there, then your pin just goes through. Now on your older ones, the metal ones, there would be adjustment on this piece right here to control the level of the float. And something else, you could have what they call a sunk float, which means fuel got inside of it, and the stuff floating on the fuel, it sinks, leaving that open for fuel to come in. So you just take it, hold it to your ear, and you shake it, and if it's dry, there's nothing inside of it, it's good. If it's got liquid in it, throw it away and get a new one. That there was 10 pounds, and you can see that it shut the compressor off. For the fuel bowl, I'm just going to take a screwdriver and break up all that rust, and take a rag and clean it the best I can. As you can see, the gasket or the O-ring stuck to the bowl, so we should have good luck getting that to seal back up. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this jet out of the side while I'm here. I'm going to go ahead and clean it and put some wire and some air up through it. And why not? I'm already here. And when I talked about a metering port earlier, it's really hard to see, but there's a precision machined hole that's inside there, and that controls how much fuel goes up into the carburetor, or should I say into the venturi. To every time it pulls fuel in, it sucks the fuel through the metering port, then up through the venturi, then it goes mixes in with the fuel, and it goes into the cylinder. Okay, so with this fuel cap, I was able to just unclog the breather hole here, so it seems like that's working now. Okay, so we're gonna try this again. This time with the choke on, it should start sputtering and carrying on, and it should also start spitting out black smoke, indicating that's running rich. Okay, so there's that part. Probably the more we run it, the better it'll clear up, but it seems to run great for an idle. Alright, so now it's time to move on to something else.